Hi, my name's Mark Milne and I'm the Director of Finance for the Town of Barnstable. Recently we've been fielding several questions about how property assessments are developed, and I've asked our Director of Assessing, Partridge, to go over the steps that are involved in producing the annual property valuations for the Town of Barnstable. Most of the questions have centered around residential property values. Mr. Partridge is here today to provide you a description of the process that we use to determine what those property valuations are. It's required by state law every year. We use a computer-aided mass appraisal system. It's not the same thing as a fee appraiser, which a resident would typically be familiar with when they're either purchasing or refinancing a home. It's very different, the mass appraisal process. And it's not a perfect science, which is why the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has put in place the abatement process, recognizing that it is not always perfect and sometimes corrections need to be made. Thank you for watching this video today, and I hope you find it informative.
Lane, thank you so much for joining us today on Town Talk. We're going to talk about some assessing things. There's been some questions that have come up recently at some town council meetings, and we want to explain a few things for the residents so they understand how this evaluation system kind of works.
Yep.
So,
great.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
happy to be here, and thanks.
Yeah. So the first thing is there have been some question about how the values are developed for the assessment purposes. Can you tell us who oversees the process of evaluation?
Yeah, sure. Me as director, I handle the things in the office, but we also have a 3-member board of assessors that's appointed by the town manager, and they review everything and sign off on it, as well as the Department of Revenue. Every time we submit values or finish values, they're submitted to the Department of Revenue, who looks them over and makes sure that they're in line. So they're kind of the last look at everything to make sure we've done it right. Mm-hmm. They do a full audit on us every 5 years. So it's a deep dive into our data to make sure everything is being looked at correctly and is listed correctly. And then every single year we do what they call an interim adjustment, which is the same process. It's just the DOR doesn't dive in so deep into looking at all the numbers. The last recertification or audit that the DOR did was in fiscal 21.
Okay. So we're not due for another one until 2026?
26, correct,
okay.
Yeah.
What are the parameters of the valuations?
So they we value property on January 1st. And this is where it gets a little complicated because it's last January 1st.
Right.
So, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. We have to get all the sales in for a calendar year, analyze all those sales, and then adjust our model that we use and put out a value. So for 2024, which we're in right now, everybody got their tax bill in January. The valuation that's on that tax bill was January 1st of 23, using the sales data that occurred in 2022. So the values are basically 2 years behind current. So that's, it's confusing for some people, mm-hmm. and it's hard to understand, especially if they just bought their house and it's got a value. Well, we didn't do it today, we did it 2 years ago.
Right.
So that makes it a little tougher. And we do value, the state of Massachusetts does have full valuation. We call it full and fair cash value. And that's the definition that comes from not only the law, but also there was court cases way back that has determined that's the term that we use. It's basically market value, though. What would it sell for on January 1st last year, right, based on the sales that occurred in calendar 22?
Right. So it's
complicated.
It's very complicated. Yeah. So it's very complicated. you do these valuations every year, so I assume you've got a staff of what, 30, 40?
Yeah, you would, I would wish. No,
Yes.
there's 9 of us,
Right.
including myself, and there's really only 5 people that are in the valuation side of it. We have 2 inspectors, and then I have an assistant assessor, an assistant director, and then myself. So yeah, a lot of work to do for just a few of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there special programming that you use to help with those valuations?
Yes, we have it's called Vision Government Solutions. It's a CAMA system, which is computer-assisted mass appraisal. So that is not only just a database that holds everybody's property, all the different aspects to those properties, but it also has a valuation part of it as well. We call it a model. We adjust the model. So we adjust the computer program to match the market as best we can. So we have over 31,000 properties and accounts that we have to value in 1 year.
Right.
So you got to use a computer to help you do it. It's a lot of work, and it's daunting. There's no doubt about it.
Right, and that goes into my next question is, so with over 30,000 properties, do you go and inspect these properties every year?
Yeah. People do ask that question.
Yes.
And no, we'd have to have a huge staff to
Yeah.
be able to do that. But if you think about it, your properties don't change that often. So, if you've done an addition, we'll definitely come out and see it. If you've changed the paint color, probably not. But we have 2 members of our staff that are out every day knocking on doors and doing inspections. We call them cyclical inspections because we're required by the DOR to inspect every property at least once every 10 years. So we come out and we'll knock on the door and we'll confirm the data that we have. They all have records with them, and they'll confirm what you have in your house, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms. If there's a reason to come in, they'll do an interior inspection, or if you want them to do an interior inspection, they will come in. Otherwise, they'll talk to you at the door, and then they'll ask to walk around the property and just take a look for what's going on, and that's it. So they're very friendly. Both of my 2 inspectors are very, very friendly. Mark and Sue, they're wonderful. If you don't want them to be there, just tell them. They'll leave.
Yeah.
They have badges on, town IDs, and so you'll know who they are. And there's nothing in the law that requires you to let us in or to be on your property. So if you don't want them there, just say, sorry, don't want you on my property, please leave. They will leave.
Right.
And if we come and you're not there, which we have a lot of second homes, they'll just walk around the house, do the inspection, and go. You may not even know they were there.
Right.
And I get that a lot too. Oh, well, no one's ever come to my house. Well, yeah, we have. You just weren't home.
Right. And you would know, is the property values is the most popular page on the town's website, and if you go in there, you'll see your pictures get updated every once in a while.
Pretty regularly, yeah. At least once every 10 years.
Exactly,
And we
so-
keep all the pictures too. The one that's on the website is the most recent one we have.
Right. So if you're wondering when the last time they came is, you can look on there. If there's a picture, they usually have the date, and you'll
Yep.
know about when it was that they were there.
Right.
How are the values developed?
So we match up our model that's in this CAMA system with the sales that are occurring. So we take all the 22 sales for this year is what we used, and we analyze those sales, and we look at them to figure out how close our model is matching those sales prices. And that's the biggest part of it, we're not inventing these values. We're just trying to match what's already out there. So the CAMA system gets adjusted on numerous levels and for different data. So we have, this past year we had 615 sales that we could use to value over 30,000 properties. Wow. So you're not going to get a sale that exactly matches every single house. It's not even close. So we do have to interpret and kind of figure out, okay, all ranches are acting the same in the market. All capes, all colonials, so forth like that. So you have to kind of make some assumptions in when you do it. So we do that. But again, it's only 2.91% of all the properties that actually sold and tell us something. So that's really hard to do, to adjust the model with just that limited amount of data to do it. So We do think of it as historically, so there's historical stuff that we assume just keeps going. And if we haven't seen your house for 8 years, we're going to assume that it was what it was when we looked at it.
Right.
It hasn't changed. So that sort of stuff. So we do take some educated estimates of where we are, and then use the data to fill in where we can, the sales and so forth.
Right.
So-
What factors would you adjust for?
So we adjust on a numerous number of things. So land area, obviously, how big is it? Where it is. We have 7 villages. So if you're looking at a house in West Barnstable, that's a lot different than, say, Osterville. So we have to take where it is into account. The size of the property, the water influence. We have a lot of water in Barnstable.
Yeah.
Not just the ocean, but we have a lot of ponds and everything.
Yep.
Estuaries, they all affect value because people want a view. So we got to adjust for that. We do style of house, we do condition of the house, the age of the house. There's a numerous number of these things that we look at, and when we do it, we're doing what they call an assessment sales ratio. So we take the assessment that we had last year, divide it by the sales price that I have this year, and I get a ratio. That ratio by state law and DOR guidelines has to be between 90% and 110% of the value on the median, not each individual property, but in overall. And you know, if you think of statistics, you think of central tendency. Median is a measure of central tendency. So, you know, down the middle, or the average, the most common, you know, this is where we want to be. So we look at those overall and decide whether we need to change the value at all. Sometimes I've had cases where it's good, didn't need any change. But if it looks like it does need a change, so let's say the overall ASR, assessment to sales ratio, is 80%. Well, I have to be between 90 and 110, so I'm at least 10% low. So we make some adjustments, change the model, and then retest everything. And we test on all those parameters that I mentioned, plus a bunch more.
Right.
To make sure that each piece of it that we're doing comes out correctly. So it's a big job, and it takes a long time, and it's hard to get it done in 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough because things you change one thing and that messes up something over here, and so okay, well then let's try changing it this way and changing that way to balance it out so that it all works.
Right.
It's not easy, and Barnstable's tough. We go from like a condominium that's under 200,000 to mansions over in Osterville over 20,000, $20
Yeah.
million.
Yeah.
So not only do we have all the water influences, but we have the villages, and we have property that is very, very diverse.
Runs the gamut.
Everything.
Yeah. From a studio to a 20-bedroom home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
a
So
lot.
it's crazy, and we only have 615 sales to tell us what to
What's
value all
happening.
of those.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty tough to do it.
Right. Can you explain why some of the values go up at a higher percentage than some of others?
Yeah, so it pretty much goes by preference. So the real estate market isn't scientific. It doesn't, you know, there's a lot of emotion and just what you like in it. So I personally don't like, you know, a real modern property. I lean towards antiques.
Right.
So I'm probably going to pay more for an antique than someone who would like a modern property, right? So, so it's, I wouldn't say it's fickle, but it does move with choice that the buyers make. And in a lot of cases, it goes to what's popular right now. So if you have a certain kitchen style, you know, for a long time there was, we were looking at French provincial kitchens, and that was like all the rage. And if it didn't have that, they were going to rip it out and put one in.
Right.
Those are out of vogue now. So, you know, we got to take things into account like that. And it can just be, I love this house, so I'm willing to bid higher for it than somebody else.
Right.
And so it would be great if it was just, yeah, everybody goes up 10%. That's it.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. But it doesn't work that way. And in some cases, sometimes, you know, even the fire districts, what fire district you're in, what village you're in, one can be more popular than the other.
Right.
The other thing that happens to us, which is really tough, is we have very little data on a specific neighborhood or street for 10, 15 years. So we're kind of raising those values more on the average.
Right.
And then all of a sudden 3 houses sell on that street and we're at 50% of value.
Yeah, changes everything.
Changes everything. So
Yeah.
now, and people will say, well, why'd you have to up it all the way? Why don't you do a little bit at a time? Well, the Department of Revenue won't let us do that.
Right.
So if I find a property that's underassessed, even if it's 50%, I got to raise it 50%. And they get a huge jump in their taxes.
Yeah.
And, you know, we feel bad about that. We don't like doing it, and that's why we try to keep up with it and make sure we're on line with where it should be, but sometimes it happens.
Right.
And, you know, it's really hard because you can't say to that taxpayer, yeah, but you've been 50% low for the last 5 years or 6 years. I mean, you know, when your tax bill jumps,
Yeah.
it's horrible, but
Yeah.
that's the truth. They've been low for a long time, so they haven't been paying as much as they should have.
Right.
So that's hard too, and it's hard to explain, but that sometimes happen. And then other things happen. We'll adjust one part of the model that fixes a problem we're seeing over on, let's say in Hyannisport, and then it throws off some values over in Osterville.
Right.
And so sometimes we don't see it, and they have to, you know, point it out to us, or maybe we see it after the values were set and done and tax rates done and bills out. So that makes it really hard too, because, you know, we don't like to get things wrong. And I wouldn't say we made a mistake.
Right.
But
Well, that goes to my next question.
it's,
It's like, let's talk about mistakes. You
Yeah.
know, do they happen?
they do.
Yeah.
You know, I would be pretty arrogant to say we never make a mistake. There are mistakes. They're never intentional, and it's usually in calibrating the model. Things get, you know, we fix one thing and it messes up something else and we didn't see it. So there is an abatement process. So if you get a tax bill that you think is wrong, you fill out an abatement application and submit it to our office. You can only do this in the month of January. I would love to give you more time, but I don't have any choice in it. This is state law.
Right.
And so that's when you have to do it. So
So something for people to remember, when you get your tax bill in January of 2025,
yep,
don't wait to look at it.
don't.
Look at it.
right away. And
Yeah.
don't think your bank, a lot of people have mortgages pay their
I'm
tax
one
bill.
of those people, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and so they don't even think about it. We never mail it to the mortgage company. You will always get a tax bill.
Right.
So we will send it to you. So when you get it, and it has to be mailed by January 1st. So we usually mail them somewhere between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
So it has to be there on January 1st. Well, at least in the mail on January 1st.
Right.
So when you get it, look at it. If you don't agree with it, you can call our office and ask us, and we'll probably tell you file an abatement application. When you do that, we ask you to look at 3 sales that are similar to your property. So we already talked about, you're not going to find something exactly like your
Right.
property. There's only 615 sales. So you need to find something that's close in your neighborhood is good, even if it's not exact. You're not going to pick the $20 million mansion in your neighborhood to compare to your little Cape.
Right.
But there are sales out there that you can look at and give us an idea. And then just describe to us why you think it's high. Because, you know, we've been working on this for over a year, and we think we covered everything. But that doesn't mean you didn't see something we didn't.
Right.
So go ahead and look at it, try to point out, try to describe why you think we're high. If it's just because the percentage I went up by too much, like we already talked about, I can't do that.
Right.
I have to do it at market value, and if I have sales in your neighborhood that are saying it's at 50% of the market value, then I have to raise everybody. So that one really doesn't get you very far on an abatement. It's much better to say, look, this house sold 2 doors down from me, and you know it's a way better house than mine, and you have me assessed higher than what that sold for. That'll get you an abatement almost every day.
Right.
So that's what we're looking for. Point out those things. You know your neighborhood better than we do.
Oh, yeah.
So that really helps if you can do that and explain to us why. So what happens once you get your application comes into us, we collect them all, and on February 1st, we start looking at them to analyze what we're going to do. So my assistant assessor, assistant director, myself will review them all. We figure out what we think, if either you should get an abatement or you shouldn't. We write up a little blurb on it and give it to the Board of Assessors. The Board of Assessors then reviews it, and they will decide what you're going to get. And then we have to mail everything. We mail a certificate out to you telling you that you're getting an abatement, or a letter that denies you an abatement. If you're not happy, usually the people that get denied aren't the happy ones,
Right.
you can request a meeting with the Board of Assessors.
Okay.
We were doing it, you would come and talk to the Board of Assessors before they decided, but it was taking so long, we weren't getting through them all, and we have to act on all of them within 3 months.
Yeah, that's going to be my next question. Like, what
Yeah.
is the time frame?
Yeah, 3 months. So you have to give us 3 months. So whenever you filed, if you filed on January 2nd, you have three months from then. If you've, at the end of the month, still 3 months from, February 1st.
Right.
So the board looks at it. If you're not happy, you can request a meeting with the board. The board will have you into a meeting, and you can bring up other information or explain yourself better than you did on paper, whatever you want to say. If you're still not happy, then there's a state appeal process. So you appeal to what's called the Appellate Tax Board. And they're in Boston, but thank goodness, one of the good things about COVID is that they do their meetings by Zoom
Oh,
too.
perfect.
You can be in person or you can be on Zoom, so you don't have to drive all the way to Boston.
That's helpful.
And there's two ways to file. You can file in an informal procedure, which is kind of like small claims court. You kind of go tell your side of the story, we tell our side of the story, and they give you a decision. Or you can make it, a full trial type thing and file in the formal manner. And we usually see that with like big commercial buildings. Like we have cases with the mall.
I was
and
going to
things
say,
like that.
yeah, I've seen that you've had
Yeah.
cases with them all.
Right,
So.
so they're always on the very formal basis, and there's lawyers and appraisers and all kinds of people come in and testify.
Yeah.
So, but the easy way is just to file informally, go in and tell your story, and we tell our story, and then the commissioner decides what you get. And the decision comes out, and then we give you an abatement if you won. If
Yep.
we don't, sorry, but that's the way it works.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty good process if you're not happy with your tax bill. And we just would like everybody to kind of give us a chance to do the process. Wait until you hear what we said.
Right.
You've submitted an abatement application. We'll get to it. I mean, there was, this year, we had, I have some statistics on how we've done this. So,
Yeah.
So in
You
20...
actually didn't have as many this year as you did last year.
As last year, it's
Yeah.
going down, yeah. So in 21, we had 367 abatements, which is only 1.25% of all the properties and accounts that we assessed. We granted 86 of them, so not too many, but we
Right.
gave some. 22, we had 176, and that's only 0.6%, not even a full percent
Right.
of the total. We granted 53 of those. In last year, we had our largest amount since I've been the director, 465. That's 1.5% of what the whole town. We granted 307 of them. So 66% of them got an abatement.
Yeah.
So we really do look at these things,
Yeah.
and we try to do what's right. This year we've had 387, which is down. It's only 1.24% of the total. Those are all, if you switch that around, do the reciprocal, I got a 98% success rate.
Right.
So it's all in how you look at it, but
But there is a process in place.
Yeah.
If people get their tax bill and they're like, I don't know about this. This seems, there's a process.
Yep.
You go through the process. Unfortunately, that window has closed for
for this year, right?
But something for the residents in the town to think of for next year.
Sure, yeah.
When you get that tax bill, don't just throw it in the pile to pay later.
Take a look.
Yeah, take a
and
look
see
at
where,
it.
See where it is, and we don't discourage you from applying. We don't hold it against you if you applied last year and you apply against this year.
Yep.
It's something could have changed. We're just trying to get it as correct as we can.
Right.
There's no advantage for the town to raise the value. that's not, there's no motivation there. Under Proposition 2.5, the town can only assess the total town no more than 2.5% over what they assessed it last year.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what the value does, we can only get in tax revenue 2.5% more than what we got last year. So there's no motivation to be high. The motivation is to be correct, because then everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're really trying to do. But 98% isn't too bad. I would take that on an exam.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
No.
Yeah, and
So-
I think it's important for people to understand the process. You know, we explained a lot today. If anybody has any questions, should they reach out to you?
Sure. The best way to get us is to call our office. The number is 508-862-4022. And my staff is really good, and if they can't answer your question, you'll get moved up to a higher level, and if you get to me, you got a really tough problem.
Yeah.
I generally don't take the regular calls. My staff can answer pretty much anything. And then if you want to do it by email, you can do it. Our email is assessing.mailbox@town.barnstable.ma.us.
Yeah, great.
So-
Elaine, you have an excellent staff. They're some of the hardest working people here at Town Hall. So I just want everyone to know that, that all 9 of you.
We try.
It seems like there should be more of you. There's only 9, and you guys, over 30,000 properties. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So
Right.
they are. My staff is absolutely fantastic. They're really, really good. They know their stuff, and they're all trying to just get it right too. And they're very helpful. Sometimes they go above and beyond a little more than I want. I had a lady the other day came into the office, and she wanted the parking office. And she was with a walker. So one of my staff members took her over to the elevator, got her down, brought her over to the parking. We go above and beyond.
Yes.
We really do.
That's great. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.